Okay, we're back with the recap from week 44 of the Stand Up Accelerator Workshop, taught down at the Creek and Cave in Austin, Texas, every Sunday from 3 to 5, or, pretty much whenever. Just always check with the Facebook group to make sure when we are actually scheduled, but 3 to 5 is our standard time. So there are 27 people at the workshop this week, and Texas is getting hot. It's getting hot out there. We waited for a few minutes outside for the doors to open, and you felt it. So during the career section of the workshop, again, the workshop sort of sets up in two sections. We run career stuff, and then we run skill and show development. Career section, kind of interesting this week. We have two people who actually got paid to write and to work on a talk show that is being put on by somebody who's in the Stand Up Accelerator from time to time, a local Austinite, Joe Ellis, who runs a talk show here at the Creek and Cave, and she paid people to help her write, which is good for her. That's what you should do. It's work. You should get paid for it. So they got paid for that, and Rock also got paid for running the teleprompter. So, good job. I like it that we're starting to pick up more professional gigs and sort of see the range of things that we can do if we all sort of pull together. Kimberly Koester is also starting to book her own tours in theaters throughout the Midwest. And she was on Kill Tony last week, so probably next week she'll be on the episode. And she did really well, she said. So that's awesome, and looking forward to seeing how all that comes about. It sort of brought up the topic of there's old school stand-up careers where you're trying to get into clubs, you're trying to build 15 minutes, then 30 minutes, then 45 to an hour, so that you can move up from opener to feature to headliner. That's what I came through. And people are still trying to do that. That really relies a lot on the quality of your show. And does it fit with the club? And doesn't fit with the other acts that you're working with, especially with the headliner. So it's all about quality of show. But there's this other side economy, or now maybe it's becoming the main economy for stand-ups, of social media plus stand-up. And that hustle culture, where a lot of people are out there booking shows, getting clips, running social media, and using that to then sort of loop back around and fill their shows. It's a really interesting option. It's a lot of work, guerrilla attack of industries and disrupting industries and doing social media and hustle culture is no joke. Like, if you're going to do it well and you're going to make money at it, you've got to really put in the time. And you got to find things that are good, that hook. But when they work really well, and you get the money. So that's kind of nice. We're going to try to get more into that over the next few months, I think, about a hustle culture approach, because Austin doesn't really have a ton of club comics, club opportunities. So we'll adjust. Then we jumped right into this week's topic, which is one of my favorite things, is turning stories into stand-up worthy stories, stand-up saturated stories. And what that means is that there are all sorts of storytelling structures which make stories good or bad. And most people never get taught even those, just the basics of storytelling. We either pick these things up well or we do them poorly our entire lives, and other people suffer when we tell stories. Things like, the story is too long, it's understimulating, you can't remember the plot, you lose your place, your characters aren't particularly riveting, you sort of de-emotion everything and de-interest everything when you're telling the story, relying on some kind of big punch at the end. That's not stand-up. Stand-up is about stimulation all the way through. And so if you're going to do stories in stand-up, and you should, because they're a great way to create a lot of material really fast, and audiences really love them when they're good, is you need to take the story spine and just drench it in stand-up comedy writing techniques. And that's kind of what we're learning right now. I started out talking about, normal world, the way people tell stories, versus sort of the special stage world where you tell stories. And for that, I split our creation into normal everyday stories, and you gather hundreds of these every day. Literally, from the moment you open your eyes, even before, when you're having dreams, people want to tell you the story of their dreams. From the time you go to bed that night and how you sleep that night, all of that is tiny micro stories all day long. Most of those stories, 99% of those stories, you just forget. You live them and you forget them the next day. But you can still take those and turn them into stand-up comedy. Or you can pick your exotic stories, the more interesting stories, the ones that are sort of born within irony and surprise and uniqueness and, oh my God, that actually happenedness, meeting weird characters on the street, things like that. So either normal everyday turned into stand up or exotic stories turned into stand up. And I did some basic storytelling training. First of all, that stories are built around plots, which means they are a structured telling in time. They follow linearly from beginning, middle to end. That is the dominant story structure for human beings. And each part of that has its own demands. The first part, the first act, is that you have to start with some kind of powerful hook. It doesn't matter what it is, but it has to draw people instantly over to the story and then make them want to hear the rest of the story. If you can't start with a big hook, then don't tell the story. Rework it because it needs a power hook. You get 3 beats in the second act in these sort of short stories. And beats are interesting things or important things that happen during the story. And 3 is a really good structure to work with. So, 3 interesting things, and then you get to the conclusion, act 3, which is the most powerful, unexpected twist in the story. And that's where you end. So that's the spine underlying all American storytelling, all the way from screenplays to really to novels when you actually break them apart. Although novels get to ramble a lot more. It isn't about restricting your creativity, by the way, to follow a pattern. It's just that we know this pattern works. The audience has been trained to it. It's psychologically effective with audiences. They like the aesthetics of that pattern. So use it and then just pour a ton of creativity into that pattern. We also talked about a couple other story upgrades, including using specific details instead of being very concrete in what you tell during your story versus vague or generic. Like if you say a big crowd of people, that doesn't tell us anything about what that crowd looked like. Was it old people, young people? Were they angry? Were they happy? It doesn't really tell us much. We need the specifics. So having a plot, having specifics, and then third thing we talked about was really strong characters. If somebody's going to enter your story, you need to turn them into a character, which means they need to have emotion, surprise, skills, specialness, weirdness, villainness. It doesn't matter, but they need to be a character. So finally, we used those 3 basics about storytelling and said, then add in our basics from the class for stand-up. So scripting, performance, character, communication. And if you merge those 2 formats, great story and great stand-up, you get a really strong stand-up bit. So we broke into small writing teams at that point. People worked on their personal stories that they wanted to bring into a stand-up setting. And then we got up and delivered those. And there were quite a few interesting stories. Anastasia talked about being arrested 3 times and then told about one of the arrests. And she's such a character that it's a strong, you're going to listen to her. And once she has structure to it, then it takes it up to another level. So there's a lot of power in the storytelling and the character, but you can also pay attention because you can follow along with the plot. Quay talked about both of her brothers getting arrested in one weekend. That was interesting. And Rock talked about seeing a robbery at Old Navy where a van just smashed into Old Navy and guys got out and just started grabbing white T-shirts for some reason. So all of those, they need a lot of work to turn it into club level stand-up or high quality stand-up, but it was a good place to start. So it was fun. And next week, we're going to do this again. We're going to keep sort of building on the strength of stories. People are supposed to write up stories and bring them in. And again, these can be your stories. You can also borrow stories from people that are close to you, where anybody in your family, friends, somebody in your town, as long as you've got some attachment to it, then you've got a personal reason to tell that story. And you can tell bigger stories too about, celebrities and famous people. But for these, we're trying to work on personal stories. And they can be nonfiction or fiction, but you just kind of need to let the audience know which ones that you're doing. So there you go. That's sort of merging story structures with stand-up structures. And next week we'll stay on that. We're going to build out some really cool stories, and I will report back on how they come out because it's a great way to generate a lot of really great stand-up.